whole world is underselling us. You know it as well as I do, right? I can't think of anything better. The fact that they aren't talking about our team with the depth that we have at every position, I've been saying it to every that I've spoken to in the media, right? In terms of our goalies, our back end close defensemen, our long stick middies, our short stick middies, our face-off guy, our midfields, and our attack. We got the best players at each respective spot. Saying what we did. We set the tone. They got to fall in our horn. You guys understand that? And that comes down to you handling your role and embracing it regardless of what it is. We don't give a f*** place. This is about us.
All right, let me bring everybody up here and welcome back. We have one recurring guest, and then we have a random guy who just happened to make time for us. So I'll let you guys figure out which one is who. Obviously, Cam, we're grateful that you obviously can join us. In all seriousness,
it is a pleasure to be able to join you guys again.
The first thing I want to address, and we were talking about it before, I was wrong. Look, I predicted that they would lose. I was wrong, and I said this to Matt, I said 10 goals was the golden number for the defense. I'll ride that horse. I don't care. You can come at me, but I got that number right. And I just want everybody to know that.
I mean, is the 10 goal streak the hold opponent? I know this wasn't like under 10 goals, but I think the under 10 goal streak is still alive, right?
I believe so.
For however many games they've won. When holding a
for when they've won. Yeah,
I don't have the exact record off the top of my head, but it's a multi-year thing of they've won every game, or it's like whatever and won when they hold opponent 10 goals.
Oh, nice! I did not know that.
So obviously we're gonna recap, and Cam graciously said to Matt before, "I'll make time if Syracuse won." And so now we're calling you to the carpet on this one. So let's kind of get right into it, though. Like, you see them score the first couple goals, right? Syracuse, obviously. And my first thought wasn't we're good. My first thought was keep the pedal going. There wasn't any of the, like, it's great. But we all knew Hopkins had some offense, right? Like, let's be fair here. Like, I think you both would agree that Hopkins had enough offense to come back.
Yeah, this was the kind of game where if it was a shootout, it was going to favor Syracuse. Yeah. And the formula that Hopkins needed was to really slow the game down and muck it up, which they were able to successfully do for most of the game, except for that burst, that 3-0 burst at the start of the game.
Yep.
And the kind of mini run that happened at the end of the third quarter when it went from 6-8 to 10-8.
Yeah. And looking at both teams had kind of major injuries, and I think they missed Melendez more than we missed Finn.
Yep.
And granted, that's one of my notes for the game is like we got to figure out our third attack. And I was glad to see Trey get some run. I wasn't overly impressed, but that's his first time really truly playing for a whole game. So I'm giving him some grace. And I think next game would be a good game for him to get his feet more under him. But there were some plays that he made that I'm like, oh, what are we doing, Trey? Like, you're doing too much with it, or like, oh, you got to bury that, or, that kind of thing. And speaking on injuries, I watched the post game with Gary and the few players, and he said that Finn is going to be out at least for a few weeks. So he expects him to be back, but he's going to be out for a couple weeks. So
Okay.
I think you could tell when he was on the sidelines with the arm in the sling that it was
yeah, yep, exactly.
this
Yeah.
is not like
He wasn't just in street clothes; he was in the sling too. So
Yeah.
So I'll be honest. When I first, obviously, I stood about the 50-yard line, and I couldn't see him at first.
Mhm.
So all I heard was the trade year introduction. I was like, oh, Gary finally made a move. There's a little bit of shuffle, like trying to get some production early and get maybe move Finn to midfield. And then you looking over there and we're like, oh, he is definitely not good. Like he is not, like he wasn't really walking around. Like
they very prominently showed him on the broadcast in the game segment
at the beginning. Yeah.
Well, they did not at the Dome, unless Matt was at the angle where he could see him, but I don't think we could.
I was looking, like I was zooming in on my phone from the other side, but like I noticed because when they were doing like the warm ups where they do like the 5-on-4 right before the game starts, he wasn't out there. So then I was like scanning the sideline trying to see where he was and couldn't find him at first. But then I saw I saw on Twitter like the post, someone like had screenshotted it and posted it. So but yeah, that was one of my biggest question marks coming out of this game is, okay, who's going to be that third spot? I know Peyton got some run too.
Yep.
He did okay. I thought he did well, especially considering he's a freshman. But I would have wanted more out of him too, especially because he's our top recruit from that class too. So, but yeah, that was my biggest question mark out of the game. Obviously, super pumped. We won. Good game. Some other notes. I thought McCool had a great game.
Yep.
Had some good saves. I think our D particularly did really good on Chavette and Collison, who are their two main weapons. And it was like, I think Collison had two. Yeah, Collison had two, and then Chavette had one. But like, we were basically like, all right, we're gonna make you beat us with your other guys. Like we're not going to let them control the game, which was awesome. I was also actually, I'll stop there so we can talk about defense and then I'll go on to other
we'll start on the offensive side first. And
Okay.
then I kind of want to flip to the defense side because there's a lot to talk about from the defensive side, including Cam. Obviously, I know you're nodding your head. Get into your Jimmy. We'll get into the Jimmy McCool stuff. We'll talk about that because
I thought I was impressed with the second line. Middies.
I was just gonna say that, Mr. Wyatt Huddle,
Cordes was the spark that Syracuse needed someone who wasn't first line, wasn't like bona fide to be able to make something happen, and Cordes being able to come in and do that to the tune of 4 points. Especially
he's player of the game in my eyes.
That goal that he scored in the third quarter, they were down 6-8. It had been 2 goals in like 25-30 minutes of game time at that point. Simply being able to beat your man one-on-one down the alley and score, probably the momentum play of the game that sparked everything in that end of third quarter run that flipped the game for Syracuse.
I was going to say, just looking at Tradier's numbers, just for the record, there was 3 shots. So he did get some run. Like he did get
he had one that he should have buried that the goalie had to save on.
In the inside, he should have buried, especially knowing what you know about Deere and knowing his hands, the box ability that he's shown. Like from a pure offensive perspective, really disappointing day for him. I felt like he was a passenger for most of the game, and even when he was able to work something into a good look, it was he missed it, or it was off the post, or it was saved by Stott. What I will say in Tradier's defense, 5 ground balls, had some big hustle plays. That back check on the ride was huge. So it wasn't like a complete, just a complete stinker. But did not inspire confidence in him holding down that third attack spot.
Yeah, I was going to say the other thing is, and maybe you guys disagree, if there isn't a better performance from everybody else in the offense, it becomes a bigger deal. And everybody is talking about Trey Deere. But because of what the offense did, we'll give them the midfield line specifically, they were able to cover up a lot of issues from Hiltz hitting 15 posts or however many posts he hit that annoyed the crap out of me. Like, The attack as a whole did a good job, though. Like, in all seriousness, like, they did a great – the unit did great. It was the riding. It was little things. Like you said, Cam, it was the back check that changed the momentum of everything. Like,
even like the one missed pass where Trey fought in the corner for it, too, like, and got it. Like,
yeah.
Yeah, like Spallina, it's interesting because he, on one hand, pretty much got locked down by Scott Smith, and there wasn't much in 6-on-6 that he was doing at all. And then you look at the score sheet, and he's got 4 points and had the huge ball trick. And you know, for him, it was found a way to contribute and stay on the score sheet, even though he wasn't winning his one-on-one matchup.
Yeah, I was gonna say the person next to me kept asking me, has Spallina scored yet? Just as an example, because like it was the quietest 4 points I've ever seen a player have.
Yeah.
Right. Like when he needed it, obviously he had it, but they didn't. Go ahead, Matt. Sorry.
I noticed that, like, so typically so far in the season, anytime the ball goes out on a shot on the end line, it's him that's going to get it.
Yep.
And there was a lot of times where Joey went to, and March would be like, let Leo take it, let Roa take it, like, because they had the shorty, and it seemed like that was the plan of attack of attack the shorties, attack the shorties, attack the shorties. So, like, when the scheme is to do that against a team, he's going to have a quieter game naturally. Like, but like you said, the quietest 4 points someone's ever had. Like, so.
I mean, he didn't get anything dodging on Scott Smith. Nothing in that entire game, right? And the 2 goals he scored were the fast break to start the game.
Yeah,
Dwan,
ball trick.
We're not tangenting on this. They need to let the poles run more. They need to let Dwan and Grace just take it in transition more, because they are capable of doing stuff like that with that kind of just shovel pass.
I was gonna say, and somebody that got injured today was a good example, though, right? Like Michael Grace was a great long pole midi at RIT. He showed what he can do on both sides.
Yeah, and like those guys have the pedigree. They should let him run. But then so that was Spallina's first goal, and then his second goal was the hidden ball trick. And the assists were like kind of longer looping assists, not like, oh, wow, threaded the needle completely. But on the score sheet, right? Like you look at it, 4 points. He brings it consistently against elite poles, even if he's not winning that one-on-one match. And that is a skill in and of itself.
Yep.
So enough said about the attack. We can jump right into the midfield, because that's my star unit of the game. As a whole, they just Matt, I think you said it. There was a former midfielder, you don't have to mention the name if you want. I think you know where I'm going with this, that made a comment about Luke Roa to you. I don't know if you want to expound on that. I don't want to call him out by name, because
it's okay. So on the episode on Thursday, you and Jovan were talking, and he was very critical of Roa. And I saw Jovan after the game, and he goes, what did he say?
He shut me up or something.
Oh yeah. Roa shut me up today. Yeah, that's what he said. Yeah.
Well, I mean, look, he's a shooter. We've all said that. He is a shooter. His issue is the dodging. He is just a shooter. When he's set up, it's perfect. The shots that he had, they set him up perfect.
I think he's a little better shooting off the run than he may be given credit for. Like, compare it to a Chauvet, who arguably best step down time and room shooter in the country.
Yeah.
But
his high to low or low to high is ridiculous.
You put him on the move, and it's an entirely different story. And that's how they were able to pretty effectively shut him out of that game. With Roa, not the same level of step down shooter, but I do think, like, on the run, and especially on the run with both hands, he's got a real cannon. And that's something that Syracuse needs, is that outside shooting presence.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, and he brought a little bit of energy to the Dome. Like, his goals brought some juice to the team.
They were impressive goals, and they were goals when Cuse needed it.
Yeah.
When they were goals where he scored and then had his head ripped off.
Yeah.
So, like, he took like at least 2 to 3 hits, like, directly to like here and up. Like
the one where his stick dragged across the ground in the like mid process of him shooting, still able to get it through. That was really impressive.
Yeah. I can count on my hand the number of players that could probably do that. I'll be honest, and that's not even a discredit to anybody else. That's a skill that a lot of people don't have when they play. Like,
when I saw Hiltz was fantastic today.
Yeah,
Especially off the dodge, right? And if
His
there's a
lefty
guy in
sweep.
this Q's offense who shot clock is winding down, you need him to beat their man one-on-one, Hiltz might be the top guy on that list at this point. With his ability, if you can just get him cutting across onto that left side and he's able to get his hands free,
Yeah.
he can do a lot of damage.
And last year's Hiltz wasn't doing that either.
No.
No, it's been a huge improvement from him in that specific category.
I think my friend, the way he compared it was a fatter Wyatt Hoddle for speed. That's the way that he said it to me, which is a great compliment to Hiltz, right? Because, like, look, in regards to midfield, somebody like Wyatt Hoddle, who I've talked about, I am the Wyatt Hoddle fan club, been there since the day one, since he stepped on and played defensive midi last year.
Mm-hmm.
He's so quick. He's the perfect fit for a midfield, right?
Yeah.
I wish he was 2 inches taller. I'll just say it that way. Like, I wish
everything would be different with him. Yeah. But at the same time, I think, he brings an initiation to the second line that they
right. Well, I mean, and to switch over to defense of that for a second, I remember, I forgot who it was they put on him, but it was a taller attackman, right? And they went right over the top of him essentially. So that's the only reason why I say the 2 inches part. He's quick enough to stay in front of everybody, like in regards to the midfield.
Oh, when that one guy got past him and shot over him.
I was just I can't think of the name, obviously, but the guys. Go ahead, Cam. Sorry.
Feels like an omitty that, right?
Yeah.
with their injuries and struggles last year, they pushed into SSDM play, and he actually fared better than I think anybody would have expected him to.
Yep.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's an offensive midfielder.
He's just got the speed. Like, he's the pure speed. He's got the Carter Rice speed. Yeah. I'll say it that way. That's the easiest comparison I can make on the current, obviously. Somebody that's like that.
And he's got like a Griffin Cook build. And like
that's a great way to put it.
The style, right? Especially that last year when Cook like transformed himself into a midfielder.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So we'll go to faceoffs first, actually, because like we talked about it before, and then we'll go to mid. Cam, I know you're itching to talk about the defense, but we're going to talk faceoffs for a minute because look, if you look, Matt, I know you will. We joke about the numbers, Matt. The numbers tell a lot of the story, right? If we look at the first half for faceoffs, they win 9-4, and we talked about it before we came on. Whatever adjustment was made. Whatever it was, it worked.
Yep.
And Johnny on the first move had him every time. It wasn't like a scrum. It was a clean, I've got it, and we're going to go. The other positive I'll say about Johnny, Matt, we talked about this before. How many times did he shoot today?
I think once.
Yep. Jovan criticized the attack for that, but I'm going to push back on that. We're just forgetting the back, like forgetting to X.
Yeah.
But I'll push back on that a little bit. He's not the scorer that he thinks he is. I'll just say it that way.
That matchup was probably one of the biggest storylines of the game because I think going into that game, those two were the top two in the country in terms of percentages.
Callahan's also a very good face-off guy.
So like it was going to be a good matchup, and at halftime I was like, oh boy, like this is going to be an issue. Like And then
even during that first half, you're like, oh man, they're going to have to really capitalize on all their possessions.
Yeah.
And they were, which was great. Like if we didn't in that first half, it's a different game, so I was happy to see the adjustments that Johnny made because he did a great job in the second half.
He's that dude, man. He is that dude. And the coaching staff deserves a ton of credit for that. There are a lot of things that the coaching staff maybe doesn't necessarily deserve credit for. But as far as finding Mullen, who I think I went and looked this up during the week. I think he was like the 5th ranked faceoff guy in the class of 23. So he wasn't like a complete unknown, but he certainly wasn't a blue chip.
Yeah.
And I remember Gary even like talking after signing day, but before he came on campus of like, well, yeah, we've got this face-off guy coming in who we're really confident about. We really like.
Right.
And they nailed that. Mullen's a star. He's one of the best in the country at this point.
He reminds me of a Ben Williams type, like somebody that can go get it and just
stockier guy too.
Just stocky enough We can name off a bunch. Cam, you obviously have looked at the history. There's a lot of stocky face-off guys that Syracuse had that were really good. It's not even a bad thing. It's the grit of Benny Williams with like a little bit more.
He is the like. Syracuse has had good face-off tandems since Ben Williams. Mullen and this iteration of Mullen and this face-off group with Mullen leading it is the best individual face-off guy they've had since Williams.
And I think, Matt, we talked about it. Obviously, Angelo gets a couple of them just because of the dumb penalties. And I'm going to dive into this just for a minute. I've told you guys we would talk about the refs. I just want to talk about this rule. I don't care about the other penalties. This face-off rule is the dumbest thing in the world to me. When an official says set and then he waits for 5 minutes. I know it's TV. I understand that. But, Matt, I'm sure you saw it live. They get set, and now you're expecting them to stand there for essentially 5 minutes. It felt like 5 minutes. Obviously, it wasn't.
Yeah.
But it just felt like it to me.
Yep.
I'm certainly not a face-off expert, and I don't know what I'm talking about in regards to it. So like, I don't know, but I do. What I will say is, for me, it's more like there is an incentive in that rule that you build up face-off depth, even if you have a guy like John.
Yeah.
Because regardless, violations are going to happen over the course of the game. Because of the timing with refs calls and all of that, right?
Yeah.
And so there's an incentive to build out depth in your face-off group as a result of that rule. I also like that it's not penalties anymore because a 30-second penalty for 3 violations and a half felt really heavy-handed.
Well, look, I mean, that's a great way to put it, right? Because if we compare it, you talked about it. Johnny is his own guy, right? Angelo hasn't really had to face off. If that rule still exists, Angelo's going to get a lot more face-offs, and he's going to have to, it's just the way it's going to work out, right? Because the rules are the rules. I hate that they keep tweaking the face-off rules, but I'm not going to launch into an hour about that because
I'm happier with this iteration than last year's. And
maybe I will agree with that.
Happier with next year's iteration than this year's. Like, it's progress.
I like that it's not a full-on penalty anymore.
Yep.
Like, okay, you just got to have the next guy go now. Like, you can't have your good guy go because he jumped. Like, I like that much better than if the team as a whole has 3 violations, you now get a penalty. Like,
right.
It rewards teams that have a setup like Houston did last year, where you have a bona fide like second guy at faceoff, or like a 2-man tandem, a tag team, and so that from a game design perspective, I love.
Well, and I feel like that's not that's not super common to have a 2-player tandem. Like, it's way more common to have your guy and then, okay, this guy can relieve him when we absolutely need it. So it kind of, most teams are going to have to just deal with, okay, now your next guy who's not nearly as good is going to be going, and too bad. You're probably going to lose this one because but now, right? Or fight for it. Now,
regardless of whether of what the distribution coming into the game is, it matters how good your second guy is.
Yep. Yeah, well, exactly. Yep. You can't get away with just one anymore.
I was going to say, I think we saw a little bit of tendency from Hopkins where when their second came in, he kind of jumped a little bit. I don't know if you guys picked up on that, but he was a little more, he stood back a little bit, right? Mm-hmm. Because then you get into that place. I didn't really see it from Angelo. I'll be honest, I'd
have to rewatch, to be honest.
Yeah. Because my buddy, and he's going to listen to this and he's going to come after me. And I'm going to get a phone call the minute I get off this. He tries to super analyze face-offs. He's not a face-off guy at all. Never been a midfielder. Long pull, man down person. Obviously, some people will understand what I'm talking about. But he's like, watch their second guy. He's like, Johnny Mullen's going to win every time because watch their second guy. He is just sitting back now because you guys just talked about. Now he doesn't want to have to come out. And then you're going back to, and then you're facing it. The only, I guess this is a deep dive on a rules thing. I'd like to see a little more penalized, not necessarily a penalty. And I know I'm going to just backtrack on everything I just talked about with the rule. I don't, but I don't know, 2 face-offs or something like that. Right. Yeah. Because if you've got a team that has a second guy, that's just a break for the first guy. It's not really, you're not really forcing an adjustment if you have a second guy.
Yeah. I guess
think-
I guess it depends on when it happens too in the game. Like if that team's down a goal and they
Yeah.
if there's like 2 minutes left, right, and you're down a goal or
Yeah.
down
Right.
2, that right, it like that's when it makes a big difference on just one
Right.
face-off.
Yeah. Yep.
So I'm pretty happy with where it's at. Like as we have seen, it can be a lot worse than the situation. It's
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
I think they're trending in the right direction. Like I'll 100% agree with that. Like it's kind of funny that they go from one extreme with the penalties to the other, where now it's just okay. You take a break. I don't want to say break. Like it's not a break, obviously, but let's switch to a big storyline though. The defense, right? Like we talked about it. Once again, I said at the top, 10 goals is the number. You keep them 10 and under, and you just hope that your offense puts up enough. That was the prayer.
Yeah.
Like that's what Jovan and I talked about last time. Like you hold them to 12, whatever number it is. You walk into this game, and you say, we're holding them to this. We're winning if our offense puts up numbers. And I thought 10 was the number. They kept it there. I'll be honest, towards the end, there was a couple of possible garbage goals that I thought were going to get over that threshold. So I was a little nervous about that just for my own sanity, because I was like, I want to be right about this. I'm going to be wrong about the prediction for the game, but I want to be right about the 10 goals.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the close, though. We'll start with a close defense, and then we'll go to Jimmy, because I want to spend a lot of time talking about Jimmy, because this was a bounce back game for Jimmy, in my opinion. But
this was stock up for Jimmy. Stock up.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, if you look at their top producers, right? So Collison's their sling it 90, 100 miles an hour midfielder. Chauvet's their attackman who can sting it low to high all day, every day. And then you got Sam's brother Brooks, who's their midfielder distributor, right? And they're out without Melendez. Collison has 2. Brooks English just has 1 goal but 3 turnovers. Or no, 1 assist and 3 turnovers. And then Chauvet has 1 goal and 3 turnovers. So like I was saying earlier, like our defense did well against their top guys, and it was like, okay, you got to beat us with your 4th, 5th, 6th guy on the team, and we're comfortable with that because we're not going to let the top guys put up 6 goals. And I was very impressed with Carter Rice, Nathan Levine. Jake looked a little questionable a couple times, Spalina.
Yeah.
But like overall, our short stick D mids I thought did really well with handling their matchups.
It's hard to think of anything egregious from the defense in this game. Anything where it's like, wow, they completely got dusted, or how did Hopkins get a shot off from that angle?
There was one play where I forget who it was, but it was on our end on the attack side. There was they went to double and he spun between them or whatever it was. There was literally one play. I can't remember who it was, but
I think it was Eiler.
I think it was. Yeah. But I think
other than that, it was they did very well today.
The spots where I had the most issue with it would be when there were a couple examples, and it was the last goal that Hopkins scored before half, of where Ride sold out so hard that once Hopkins was able to get past it into the midfield, they had just wide open space to run into.
I think, at least from what I heard, Matt, maybe you heard it there. I don't know, Cam, how much the announcers talked about it, but people were convinced that Gary called the timeout there. There were people literally screaming, "Why call the timeout there?" And I got news for people. I could be wrong. That was the
one where the ball went on the ground, even though Hopkins still got their timeout.
Yeah.
I don't know. The announcer didn't really touch on that much.
Okay. Well, see, Cam, I set you up for a 5-minute rant about the announcers. No, it's Michael Grace is obviously going to be they're replacing Michael Grace is going to be an issue going forward. Let's just be fair here. He's a defender that they need, depending on how bad it is. Let's just clarify.
Yeah, do we fully know the extent of anything with that yet?
No, not yet. They didn't say in the post game. Well, we have no game this week, so like
Right.
if he just needs a
yeah,
week off.
hopefully, just a
So-
week to rest up. Yeah, I think a lot of the guys just need a week to rest up.
Well, and it's
English.
really like it's 2 weeks
Literally
from
everything.
yesterday. Like not to just skip over Manhattan, but like it's 2 weeks from yesterday. That's really the next big game, right? Like, so if you have to put in Kakemo to fill in for Grace for the Manhattan game, like
Yeah.
that's when you feel
Manhattan
comfortable,
is
you know.
Get the young guys experience. Like even if
Yeah.
there's like Bolin, I think Bolinino is playing LSM, but
Yeah.
you know, if there's a freshman that you could say, okay, maybe we have a game to burn without getting rid of their red shirt. We just want them to get some experience. That's what Manhattan can be for. Like I'd love to see, not to just go back to offense, but like I'd love to see Bear Anderson in the third attack spot against Manhattan, just to get him reps in that position.
Yeah. Well, and you know, if you put Kakemo down low, you've got Kaczynski and Sagiter. I think that's how you say his last name.
Yeah. Peter.
Like that's still a good 2 LSM duo. Like they've both been playing well. So
I think Kakemo moving down is probably the logical step. Or even I think because Cole came in to close it.
I noticed that one as well. And
I think part of it was he was in for man down, and then I think
maybe
he had a little bit of stretches where he stayed in because the penalty was killed or whatever.
Right.
It's not full junkyard dogs anymore. It's like hybrid junkyard dogs.
Yeah, it's like half and half. Yeah.
And Grace on, but they bring in the other specialists.
Yep.
So let's talk about the difference in this game. At least we've all said like everything's a star unit, right? But Jimmy McCool versus Luke Stout decided this game. Luke Stout could not see the ball. Could not see the ball at all. Like we criticized Jimmy, Matt. You know this, obviously. We criticized Jimmy all year for not seeing the ball. That was Luke Stout. I don't know what it was, whether it's the glare, the freakishly weird colored helmets, which I could dive into a 25-minute rant about that.
I love those helmets.
Great helmet podcast.
I love them. I love them.
We can get Diggs tape on. This is how we get Diggs on the podcast. No, I love the helmet.
I will listen. Matt, because you talked to him. I think you tell him if he wants to do a helmet episode, I will 100% do like a 2-hour, 25-minute, however long he wants to do a helmet episode.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, see, Cam knows the history, but like in all seriousness, like Jimmy saw the ball a lot better today. Like I think people just need to realize that. Like
I know one of the things that Gary said out of the Harvard game was like, so Jimmy's from like that area, and he has I think he has friends who are on the Harvard team too. Like, so there was a little bit of a level of added pressure for that game. And I wonder if some of that is what happened with Stout too, because he's from Camillus.
Yep.
He's from the area. Like coming home, he hadn't had to do that yet because Loyola never played us. Like, so I wonder if there was a little bit of added pressure there too, and that got to him a little bit. But yeah, he did not have a great game.
The only question mark.
Scott was a West Jenny guy.
Yeah. I was gonna say the only question mark I had, and it's just a subtle thing. It's Jimmy running the ball up. Like there's a couple of times where I saw that, and I love it, a lot of it. But like you guys know, like one turnover, right? If this comes down to a 1-goal game, and we all know what
the like lax analyzer part of my brain gets anxious about it, but every other part of me, I freaking love it when goalies run with the ball. I love it.
And he got rid of it when he needed to and took care of it. So
like, I would be the person to yelling, shoot! Like,
he reminded me of Blaze Riordan when he was doing that, because Blaze was the type of goalie who would do that, but then Blaze would go up and shoot.
Yep. Well, and that's the play that if you pull off running up and then getting rid of the ball successfully, okay, great job. But if you don't, you're like, what the hell is wrong with you? Like,
right.
So there's no middle ground there. It's either you did awesome or what the hell's wrong with you?
Well, I think that's
my God, goal of the year, or what are you doing?
I was gonna say I think that's why I can't really criticize it too much, right? Because both times it worked out. Just like it worked out the way they needed it to. It wasn't like one of those ones where it's like you said, Matt. Hopkins intercepts it. Then they go down and score, and then everybody is screaming at Gary. They're not screaming at Jimmy because we all know how this works out. If Jimmy throws an errant pass, it's Gary's fault.
Yep.
If Jimmy doesn't, obviously, I know you do. So don't. And I'm a Gary critic. So
I am the person who has defended Gary for a long stretch of the time. Because there are a lot of things that are just patently not his fault that end up being blamed on him. I have legitimate criticisms that still persist of really Gary and March about the stretches this offense goes on where they just look inept. And it's almost a like they're begging. I know they run this open set, this motion set. There needs to be some structure when things just aren't working. Like you have to have a designed play, something you can dial up that's a quick hitter or gets you an easy look to at least break some momentum. Because there's periods in this game, periods across the season where it just feels like the offense is figuring it out on the fly, and there's not really a set structure, and that just leads to in the Utah game, it led to the awful second half where they couldn't pass the ball properly. In this game, it leads to situations where if they're not winning one-on-one dodges, they're cooked.
I was gonna say,
I just don't know if I trust Gate and March to come up with an adequate plan B. For that.
I was gonna say, and that when you listen to Giovanni, because we talked about this before, he said 99, and Matt can agree to this. He said 99% of the stuff you just said, and that was a lot of his criticisms as well. The same thing. So you are on tier with a lacrosse analyst who criticizes Gary Gate. There's your answer.
I hope I know something. I don't know. I don't have experience playing the sport. But
but that was his big and we can get into kind of a bigger picture thing because Jimmy was Jimmy. Jimmy was what I expected Jimmy to be. That's the easiest way I can say it.
I am cautiously encouraged by what I have seen from Jimmy so far this season. Granted, the disclaimer with that is I didn't watch Harvard. I didn't watch his objectively worst game. However, he's been over 50% in every other game he's played. He was over 50% in College Park, 58% today.
I was going to say,
is he an All-American level goalie? Probably not. Is he fringe and good enough that a good defense can work with him, and that's a Final Four caliber defense? I think so.
I think if we're being fair to Jimmy, though, we're probably a year away from that, the All-American status.
I think so too. Right? He's a sophomore. But I have more consistent faith in the defense than I do in the offense at this point.
Yeah. Well, and my only piece of criticism for Jimmy is he a couple, 2-3 times a game gives up a really bad rebound. And
rebound control is an issue.
Yeah. So
that's how he gets to that next level.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yep.
So we kind of touched on it a little bit before, but I want to go bigger picture, right? Enough people have heard about Hopkins. We've said enough things, and a lot of people watched it. So the one last thing I'll say about it is shout out to the fans. A couple weeks ago, Matt, you heard me. I called out everybody and I said, "This is the game you need to be at. This is the first of a couple games you need to be at. This isn't just the one because we all can circle the Carolina, we can circle Notre Dame, obviously as two other ones. But I wanted the fans to show up, and they did it. 8,607 is a great number. I wanted 10K, but I'm okay with 8K. I just want to make that very clear to a lot of
almost
people.
9. Yeah.
The crowd, you guys were there. You guys know better than I do.
Yeah.
Seemed pretty it seemed like the 3-0 run, everybody was going, and then it just very over gradually just kind of quieted down for most of that second and third quarter. But when the hidden ball trick they scored, that was when the crowd completely got back into it and willed them through that fourth quarter. At least that's what it seemed like on the broadcast.
It seemed like that. There were obviously you have a couple people that are always cheering. I just want to be clear about that. Everybody wasn't sitting on their hands or anything like that. Obviously, I know you're not saying that, but there was that lull. It was okay.
Yeah,
Hopkins comes back and ties, and then it's oh, here we go again. Here's the same old team that
But
We
also
thought
when you're scoring 2 or 3 goals over
Yeah.
a span of 15, like multiple quarters,
right.
it's hard to have the momentum plays that get the crowd going again.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think like you said, I think the thing that reignited it was the Joey goal, the hidden ball
Yep.
trick. Because to be fair, I had to watch replay
Well,
a
and that
couple
put us
times
up
as I
one
was.
too. So
Yeah, I'll be fair. I had to watch it a couple times as I was leaving, just to like see because like you watch it live, and you know the dome screen
Were
shows
you guys fooled live?
Yes, 100%.
So I didn't even realize they were doing a hidden ball trick because
Yeah.
I must have looked to my son to talk to him or something, because then I saw Joey with the ball at midfield and I was like, why is he gonna shoot it? And then I
Yeah.
saw that the goalie was out of position. I was like,
Where's the
oh
goalie?
Yeah.
yeah. I was like, oh, they
Yeah,
faked him out. Like I didn't I just thought Joey had the ball and didn't even realize they had tried to fake it. So
I had glanced away when they pulled it off, so I saw the ball go in, and I heard Jay Alter go, Sam English, and I was like, okay, great. And then you watch the replay, and you're like, oh, they completely hit the ball trick.
Well, I was gonna say that's what everybody else in the dome said. So you were not alone, because everybody else in the dome was screaming Sam English's name.
Yeah, well,
And then
Jay
it's like,
Alter
okay.
and Clark got fooled by it, both completely.
I think that's fair though, right? Because like you look at a play like that, and Hopkins was communicating all game about this because Syracuse had tried to kind of do it before, which is why it was kind of, yeah.
I really empathize with Scott Smith on that, because when you watch the replay, he's like doing jumping jacks, like Joey has the ball, guys.
Yeah.
Joey has the ball, and I think most of the defense figured it out, but Stott just didn't, and that's
No, so the original thing that I thought somebody had gotten down and then Stott ran out to cover. Somehow they switched it up. And that's where it got me, because I was like, oh, Stott's running out to cover. Yeah. Something happened. And then you see the replay and you're like, oh.
They just got him.
Yeah. And I think that like epitomizes Stott's performance, though, right?
Yeah.
Like,
he
didn't know where the ball was.
There was nothing where he like there was a few of those shots on Deere in close, but there was nothing that he like where you're like, wow, he flipped the goal there. Like
yeah.
If he made a save, it was usually a bad shot,
right?
Or they hit the post, or they missed. And otherwise, they were able to get their goals on him.
Yeah, I think he had like 2 good saves. It was the one on Deere point blank, and then there was one. I think it was Joey had a nice shot, like 3/4 to low, and Stott got down low and stopped it. But yeah, he did not have a good game.
He's won the specialist battle today.
And if Owen doesn't hit 25 pipes, that score is a lot different, because there was a lot of those that
it's 18-10 instead.
It wasn't even Hiltz. It was, I think Leo had like 2 pipes.
Yeah.
Roa had one.
Yeah.
I
think Hiltz was the standout. That's why I say Hiltz, because he was the one that seemed like had the most.
Yeah,
because
he had like 3.
Every time he went sidearm. I know he's typically a sidearm shooter. I understand that, obviously, but every time he went there, it was like, oh, that's off by an inch, another inch, and we're good. And Stott didn't even see him. That's the killer part of that. That like he was on the other side. There was a couple of times where Jimmy had a stick down, and naturally, I hate having this, but there are fans who are goalies, and every time Jimmy got scored on, it was like, oh, I would have had that. Oh, I would have had that. Jimmy didn't have a stick down. And look, I get people play the sport. I understand it. I'm not criticizing, but don't act like you had it, because that would be like me saying that pass that went 25 yards above me. Yep, I would have had that 10 years ago.
Yeah, right.
It's just not going to work out. Like
I'm not making that play in my Tuesday night men's pickup.
Yeah, like, and they probably made those plays, but there is a reason why Jimmy is D1, and there's a reason why some of these goalies are in the stands. And I'll just say, for clarification, Matt, they're around our age. That's how I'll phrase it. So they're not like old.
Yeah.
But they're old enough.
But they're not spring chickens either.
I don't think Jimmy's a weak link in this team at all. And I think that was preseason going in, right? Maybe
that
was the biggest question mark.
Yep.
Well, I don't know. Like I think part of it is we asked too much of the offense or whatever. But at the same time, you look, and I know that they, Finn being out is a big deal. He was he's such a connector for the offense that goes unnoticed in a lot of different ways. And then he's been putting up production in that third attack spot the last couple games.
Yep.
Even still, you look at this team on paper and you ask yourself the question, how often does this team, and especially the offense, do they add up to the sum of their parts?
Yep.
Or exceed it? And we've seen them do it in bursts, and when they do it in those bursts, they look like a championship caliber team.
Yeah.
Well, and looking at the numbers too, like Finn is shooting 52% on the season and has the least amount of turnovers of our starting six. Like,
Yeah.
so he like, I know that was one of the biggest criticisms of him last year. That was one of his biggest criticisms last year was his shooting percentage. He wasn't shooting well. He was giving up the ball, like, and he was doing way better on all those things. So let's hope we get him back because we could use him. So
need him back for the kind of end of the season run, especially in the tournament.
So bigger picture, kind of finish it a little bit on this. Bigger picture, what does this game say to you guys, or what are the question marks that come away? Because there's a couple. Like Cam, you just kind of talked about it, right? With the offense, like, can they do this consistently? If the defense can hold an opponent to 10 goals, I'll just phrase it that way. Like, there are a lot of things that went right today for the offense. Like, we can be fair here.
Here's my takeaway: they're not frauds. Yeah. They're not frauds. All right, and especially with Maryland, with the Harvard loss, like if they'd have lost this game, and there was, I think, a point in the third quarter where a lot of people were feeling like, oh, man, blow the whole thing up. Like these guys don't have it. They're not going to be able to put it together. I was certainly in that category as a pessimist in the third quarter.
Right.
You know what? The individual talent won out today in the end on offense, and even if it was just guys beating their man one-on-one off the dodge, Cortez, Leo being able to do that. You get the hidden ball trick, which I don't know, it feels like one of those a season actually. And good time for to use their one hidden ball trick of the season.
Right.
Even in the fourth quarter, right? English being able to that play where he was like stretching and like cramping.
I was gonna say, Matt,
that was against his brother, Cam. That was his brother guarding him. Which I was like, oh my God. I didn't realize that till after. I was like, what a big brother move right there.
Well, and like in regards, I was going to say, in regards to that, I think, Matt, I kind of told you this, and Cam, I don't know how well they showed it on TV because I haven't watched it. I haven't watched the replay. But watching him get that first step on his brother, I was like, he's gone. You're not. Yeah. He took the first step and he was gone. And I think
that leads to the easy step down look by Leo, right?
Right.
Yep.
So, like, at the end of the day, structure or not, enough guys won their matchup one-on-one and made plays and scored off shots that they pulled it out. And so the talent was able to overcome, say what you will, about their inability to kind of do it consistently. Like when it mattered, when the chips were down in the third quarter and the fourth quarter, when they needed a big moment to kind of save their season, they pulled it out. And so I don't know if I believe in the staff's ability to get this offense to add up to something greater than the sum of its parts, but I'll believe in the talent. I'll believe in the talent that is on the roster because it is a Final Four championship weekend level of talent on the roster.
I am clipping that, and I am sending that to somebody who told me that they aren't even a championship weekend team. I'm just going to tell you that.
I didn't say they were championship weekend team. I didn't say they were.
No, but in all seriousness, that's a great way to put it, right? Because Jovan and I talked about like somebody like Sam English. Great player. Matt, we kind of talked about this a little bit before Cam was able to hop on. Great player, but I don't know if they're burning him out by playing in both sides or something.
They must be.
Like, because his quickness, right? Like we talked about it. He is quick. He is insanely quick. And I just don't know. Like it works for some people. Cam, I'm sure you learned that with your learning through watching your history, right? There are a couple players for SU history that work both sides. There are a lot of players who are only meant to play one side.
Yeah. Not that I have experience playing like in any kind of organized way, it's got to take so much out of you to do it both ways and to be on the field in as many situations as English is on the field for.
Well, and I think
I think Dana Restia asked the question on Twitter, like, how much actual game time out of the 60 minutes do we think English is playing? And it's probably 45 or 50 minutes out of 60.
Yeah. Well, the other thing that Jovan said to me, it's when he played, he had somebody else. So if he wanted a breather, he could hop off the field, and somebody like Matt Abbott, you and I have talked about him, that's a guy who could step in. And I don't know, this kind of goes to the bigger question mark picture. I don't know if there is that guy that can play both sides. Where if it's like, Sammy, we need you to take a breather for one possession or 2 possessions. We're going to get the seconds out there. I don't know if they can survive that. I guess that's the way that I would say it.
I think offensively, if you're running the second line a little more, okay, that's
And they ran him a good amount today too.
Yeah.
It also then just depends on how they're performing and what the makeup is. And again, a positive takeaway is that Cortez has emerged in that facet, right? And I definitely give him more time and more reps.
Well, and obviously the Finn injury plays a part in it too, right? Because Trey Deer would be on the second line. So there's another person that kind of gets shifted in. And we talked about it, Matt. You talked about it with Jimmy being at Harvard. Trey getting bumped into the starting lineup and them saying, just play your game. Just steer. I don't know if that was too much pressure. I don't want it to come off that way. I don't know if he was in his own head the whole game. I have to put on a show.
For me, there's too much of an overlap between Deer, Leo, and Hiltz as far as the positions that they're occupying,
right?
And the skill sets that they're bringing to the table. What we need, what Cuse needs from that third attack spot, at the very least, is someone who is going to be able to command a pole either through their one-on-one dodging ability or through their kind of craftiness and off-ball movement and creativity in the way that Finn has displayed it. And so there's a case where if Trey is able to work off ball and finish the looks that he gets and command enough attention that he can command a pole in that regard, then it works. But when it doesn't, you just have a passenger out there at the third attack spot that the defense really need to worry about. I mean, and that's where, even at least if you're putting Bear out there, he's going to make mistakes. Yeah, he's going to do dumb freshman stuff. But that's someone who can take a shorty to the rack and command a pole from a dodging perspective. And then that opens that up for Hiltz and Spallina to take a little bit of attention off them for the attack unit. So it's a whole knock-on thing.
Yeah. It's like dominoes.
I was going to say, and this is where that team misses is somebody like Griffin Cook too, right? Because we all joked about Griffin Cook. He is the guy who could slide down to attack. We talk about positionless. We mock it, all that stuff. But he is that quintessential positionless guy where if you needed him to play on the second line, he could. But if you needed him to be on the third attack spot, there's your assist guy. He can feed all day long and then just kind of play quarterback.
I was talking with people on Twitter about this from a perspective of the staff. Last year, they got bailed out a couple times towards the end of the year because they put Leo. They took Millet off. They moved Leo to X. Yep. And it worked. It worked against Virginia. It worked against Towson. It even worked against Denver, even though they didn't complete that comeback. Right. The part is, the staff saw it work and then went to the next game and said, "Yeah, we'll put Millet back out there at starter." Yeah. There's even today from the midfield, there were plays where Leo was occupying positions that an attack would occupy.
Yeah.
The goal that tied it back up at 8. Was quintessential. He's playing attack, low left side, low on the right side, round GLE, beats his man, takes him to the rack. There's a kind of proven use case, not with this exact personnel, but that you can put Leo at attack and he and Hiltz can work together, and there's a genuine bona fide attack line. Because Leo is also probably the presence that, from a dodging perspective, commands the most Hopkins attention. That was something that Clark rattled on in the broadcast a lot, was that Leo's the only guy who's drawing secondary slides from Hopkins' defense.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and that's where the benefit of having Trey as a third attackman is. beneficial to putting Leo in that spot because then they're gonna put Trey on the crease because that's his MO is catching on the crease and try to finish, right? So then you don't have to worry about having him out on the wings because you want to plug him in on the crease, and then you can move a Leo down there and maybe have a Owen at X or something like that. Like you can move those pieces around. So
right.
But like if it's that, and if that's the even if that's the kind of like position that you take up, regardless of what the lineups say, would you not want Leo to be the guy out there more than Deere? Like, would you not want Leo to be the guy out there in unsettled situations? So
yeah.
I think this goes back to the staff, though. Like you just kind of talked about it. They are positionless. Unfortunately, whether we want to admit it or not, they are positionless because they're not going to technically put Leo down there. But like you said, they put him in attack spots, and they move Owen up to midfield spots, and then because a lot of times today you saw Owen up top.
A lot of like interchanging, and a lot of.
And when it works, it works. Like, let's be fair here. Like, but there are a lot of times this year where it hasn't worked.
Most of the time this year, it hasn't worked.
Yep.
And that's the question: is like, can this staff make adjustments? Can this staff find ways to just get the offense sparking again? Because it's very bipolar this year. The offense, they are either in a flow, in a rhythm, and they can light it up in a way that nobody else right now that I can really think of in college lacrosse can. But and like we see those flashes. We saw it to a degree today. We saw it in the fourth quarter against Towson. We saw it in the first half against Utah. The question is just what happens when they get into these long runs that it's just not like it's not crisp enough, or it's not the shots aren't falling, or it's not coming together in the correct way. Like, what do you do in that case? And I still don't know if beyond guys just winning their matchups, there's a real answer to that the coaching staff has showed us.
And I could be wrong about this. I think they went like 8 minutes without scoring a goal against Harvard. I think it was something like that to finish the game, or it was some nut stat, like kind of what you're talking about though, Cam, right? Because a team like that gets a lead. And for an example, the Harvard game, right? Without even watching it, you could say 8 minutes, they should win no matter how much they're up. Like, it doesn't matter. You can play the stats game. You can play all that, but they should win that.
Yeah.
The 2-minute non-releasable.
Yeah.
Where and I think people take the like whole flashy behind the back stuff too far. Yeah. These guys are capable. We've seen them be able to do it. And it also adds a layer of deception. But to turn the ball over like that on a 2-minute non-releasable and just kind of cancel it out.
Yep.
It was
really brutal. Really brutal.
Well, but that's
a situation where it's like, I know what this offense can be, and I know what they're also showing me they are most of the time. And
and Matt kind of said it about. I was going to say Matt kind of said it about Jimmy clearing, right? If he clears it, it's a great play. Because if Spalina scores on it behind the back, everybody goes nuts. Everybody just goes nuts. But when it's that turnover, now it turns into, okay, you should have pulled it out. You should have. There's a lot of things like it's just the either or. Like, you're not going to win either way, because there's going to be somebody in the stands who's 75 years old, and there are a bunch of them that see the behind the back cam, kind of like you said, though. They shouldn't be doing that. They should be shooting traditional. We'll call it traditional, over the hand, over the top. There are a lot of. Go ahead. Sorry.
What I will say to that point, I will always embrace the creativity and behind the backs, because that's a key thing. That's the Roy Simmons Jr. legacy. That's what he told with Gary Gate, and now that's what Gary Gate is telling Spalina and these guys. So from like, that's what Cuse is, and that's the legacy that Cuse has left. But I also do think there are genuine advantages to having that in your bag and being willing to pull it out. From a deception or a changing angles kind of standpoint.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like we joked about the hidden ball trick, right? It's going to happen once a year, but when it does, it's amazing. Everybody goes nuts. Everybody just doesn't. That's the easiest way I can say it, Matt. I don't know if you want to chime in on the behind the back stuff or.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's kind of like what we mentioned with Jimmy. Like when it goes off without a hitch,
Yeah.
It's the Sports Center highlight. It's the whatever. But then when it doesn't, it's the opposite of, oh, you're being too cute or whatever. Like, and there are times where the behind the back is the best option, right? Like if you're dodging, if you're a right-handed guy and you're dodging down the right alley and you're losing space, well, then you go behind the back to increase your angle, right? Like then it makes more sense. That one that Trey pulled where it got taken away, like it didn't seem necessary in that scenario. Like I get you can make that pass, that's great, but like then it just blew a chance to put up a couple and start, maybe burying them, like so.
This is another thing that Finn and Hiltz are both really good at is knowing when to pull that off. And I don't think Finn gets enough credit for knowing when to kind of pull the trickery out of the bag.
Right.
Well, that's one thing that I was impressed with today was the fourth quarter. We got away from playing cute and played smart, right? There were several times where we got the ball back, whether it was like the one where Trey came from behind and knocked it out, or like that kind of stuff where we could have tried to push it. But we said, nope, let's get our guys out. Let's settle it down. Let's get into our offense, right? Like instead of trying to have the cool fast break highlight goal, like it was just, all right, let's get into our stuff. We're being successful in it. And the stats show it. Like they had one turnover in the fourth quarter. I
think that speaks to the quintessential.
The offense was more direct than it was. I think there are times where they get in these ruts and they're trying to find the perfect pass. They're trying to find the perfect way to totally break down a defense and get someone open on the crease. And in the fourth quarter, it was just beat a man, draw a slide, pass it to the open guy.
Yep. It was even more intentional, right?
Yeah, exactly. It was that was what they were targeting.
Well, I think that speaks to the pace, though, right? Because we joke about the Syracuse up and down pace, and when they needed to today, they slowed it down enough to control the game. And then you play the Hopkins game against them. Okay, you guys want to kill 30 seconds? Okay, well now have fun coming back from 4 goals down with 2 minutes less on the clock because now these possessions we've trained them and we've.
Yeah, well, I can't remember what episode it was. A game or two ago, Dan, I said to you, the goal should be to be around 10 turnovers because turnovers are going to happen, right? It naturally happens. One too many guys don't get back, so you got to, offsides, the boneheaded stuff, or just a errant pass. It's bound to happen. Players aren't going to be perfect. We had 11 turnovers. That's a good number. You want maybe a couple more or less, but the 10 to 12 range is probably your ideal. Anytime you get 13, 14, 15, 16, that's when you start getting in trouble, and that's what happened to Hopkins. Hopkins had 15 today.
Right. Well, and key plays down the stretch, too, where they made a bunch of good passes, and Hopkins just flat out didn't. There were a bunch of plays where Hopkins got caught. And
both man down units did well today.
Yeah.
You know what the stat of the game for me is, and maybe a very encouraging takeaway? Syracuse was plus 12 on ground balls. They owned it. They owned it. And that was that played a huge part.
Yeah, those scrums, they came out with them, and that hasn't always happened in the past couple years.
That's the 50-50 stuff that swings games more than a lot of other things that get more attention.
We had 16 in the third quarter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The only rebuttal I have to that, Cam, is Matt. We kind of joke about this, but Cam. So if a team outdoes another team, 35 to 20 ground balls, let's just say, Matt, I think you know where I'm going with this.
Yep.
And the shots on goal and everything, that team should win, correct?
In theory.
That's what you're saying, the 50-50.
It adds up. It adds up, right? But winning the ground ball gets you possessions and gets them less possessions. And that's kind of a situation where, okay, then it's about what you do with your possessions, but having a possession advantage.
Well, even if you compare ground balls to faceoffs, third quarter we won 6 faceoffs and we had 16 ground balls. So knock off 6 of the ground balls because those are faceoff wins, right? So then we had 10 ground balls to their. Well, and if you knock off 1 for their 1 faceoff win, so we went 10-3 against them in the third quarter ground balls. Right. That's a big difference maker right there.
Cam, I'm going to
So
read you some
that's
stats.
the
I'm going to read you some stats just for a test. We're going to test this theory. Matt, I pulled up the stat sheet because I want him to get this one. Not to drive the point home. This is obviously from a different game. So Cam, 28-4 faceoffs, 40-24 ground balls.
Oh, this is Harvard.
Yeah, I was going to say. So that's where right, like so that's where those stats like kind of backfire. Right, they're misleading.
Because that's what makes the Harvard game infuriating. But I don't know.
Because you look at just those numbers, for an example, the Harvard numbers, and obviously we're going backwards, but like that team should win 99% of the time. Flat out, just not even a question. Clears are great. They dominated that. Cam, it's like you said, though, it's the question marks of the offense, right? They dominate all those stats, and then I don't want to say it this way, but they put up 15. You know what I mean?
The 14, biggest question mark about this Syracuse team is which version of the offense shows up.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's not anything to do with personnel or talent. It's just when they're on and they're clicking, they look like the best offense in the country. And when they don't, they go on these runs of 15 minutes where you're scoring 1-2 goals and things just aren't clicking. Right. It's the difference between the English cross skip pass to Leo for I don't know exactly what goal it was in the fourth quarter, where that's just a clean, simple catch and release into the bottom corner. And there was a possession in the third quarter where very similar look, and Leo is wide open on a step down and just doesn't catch it properly.
Right.
It's that whether it is scheme or they're not being supported in their scheme enough, or it's just a lack of focus, whatever it is, how far Cuse goes this season is dependent on how much can the offense get into its flow state. And how consistent can they be?
I was going to say, if we asked ourselves that, we wouldn't have said that's a question mark. I know you said it, Cam, earlier, but we would have said that's the one unit as a whole that we knew we could count on. And now it's like, okay, the defense plays better today. Starting to look a little better. Like there's obviously some instances, but they started to look a little better today.
The defense has been impressive this season.
Yeah.
Harvard for however that game went, and knowing it was just a stinker by Jimmy and a bit of a stinker by the defense, that's still one of the best offenses in the country. Still one of the most efficient offense in the country. Maryland as a loss, I was annoyed with it when it happened. It has only looked better and better in the 2 weeks since it happened. And they've been really good in every other game. So
the thing that's interesting to me, so looking at how everything's going so far, not just for Syracuse, but for the whole landscape, is there's no truly dominating teams like we had in last year in Notre Dame or 3 years ago now in Maryland, the 22 Maryland team. There's way more of everybody beating everybody. Especially now Notre Dame, who everybody thought was going to be untouchable, has lost to, so all the ACC teams have a loss. Maryland is the only Big Ten team who's undefeated. People are it's a matter of matchups, who shows up that day, who's their shots are hitting, and they're not shooting wide. There's so much that goes into all this right now that it's gonna this is the first year in a while where it's not maybe short of Maryland, that a team might be a lock for the championship weekend, right? At least with how things are looking right now.
I think Maryland, and this is a question that was being asked on Twitter of who looks definitively like a Final Four team so far, and it's Maryland.
Yep.
And
everybody else.
And maybe Notre Dame based on our kind of preconceptions about Notre Dame. Well, we're watching them kind of be proven wrong in real time, and then who else? Cornell lost. Princeton looks pretty good, but it is very wide open.
Well, and like you guys said, Ohio State does what they do, and then they play against Utah the way that they do, and then you look what they did last night.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, that's a perfect example of eating each other alive.
Yep.
And Maryland
Well,
just skating through and just not skating, obviously, because they're playing good games. But they're the one team, like you guys said, that's just surviving and advancing every week. They find a way.
Maryland is a bad McEnany game away from losing.
I agree with that.
Like,
also true.
like-
Yeah. They're riding on the best goalie in America.
Right.
Yep. And he's back to
But
what he was 2 years
they're
ago.
still,
Yeah.
Right. But that's also just an example of, with Tillman, the defense is always going to be absolutely elite. Shaler has been phenomenal. It's stepping up for Zappatello. And the
I
offense
hate that
does
his
enough
name
to get
is
it done.
it's like the same as mine, just spelled differently. It makes me so angry.
I don't know if we'll have to ask like John Googs how you pronounce it, but
I think it's technically Schaller because he also has a
Schaller.
little brother, I think, going to Maryland too.
Okay.
Soon.
But Maryland finds ways to get it done in situations like this. Whereas with Syracuse, it's often in this case, you were proven wrong. Like I didn't think when it was 8-6 in the third quarter, I did not think they had it in them to come back and figure it out offensively. And they did.
Yeah.
They proved me wrong. That's a great feeling.
Yeah.
But it doesn't answer all of the questions that I had.
Right. Well, I mean, even speaking to that point, when they're up 3 and you're looking at how much time is left, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I was like, there's a lot of time left. And if Hopkins just gets 1, that doubt starts to creep in more and more and more and more and more. And then you play the game like.
When they were up 3, I felt pretty good. When they were up 2, it was like, okay, we swung at a moment. But when they were up 3, and especially after they had that turnover, that really bad turnover, unforced, it was like, okay, Cuse got this.
I just think that killer instinct isn't there. Like we talked about it before, right? Like we talked about it, Matt. We've talked about it all year. The killer instinct.
Yeah.
They got away with it this week, and I hate to say it, they got away with it because they beat a really good Hopkins team, but they got away with not having to put them away. I guess that's the way that I was raised.
On when they needed it.
Yep.
In the third quarter and fourth quarter.
Right.
They deserve credit for that, right?
Yeah.
They showed up when the chips were down.
Right.
Yep.
Like we joke about it, but they're typically a first half team, and today they were a second half team. Like they made the adjustment defensively.
And that's something else to be encouraged by. Is okay at some point, even if it was just we didn't find a magic formula, we just started winning our one-on-one matchups and that unlocked everything.
Yeah.
Or even just the shots started falling. Like this offense is very consistently able to outshoot their opponents.
Yeah.
That being said, they usually don't get as many shots on goal as their opponents do. But I don't think anyone is questioning the ability to consistently generate good looks. It's just a matter of like execution in that regard.
Right.
And when it mattered, they executed in this game.
Yep.
I think that's fair. So we'll actually end it on the expert's opinion. I'll just call him the expert because he is the guy that you both are. No, but to be fair to both of you, you guys follow more of the college lacrosse as a whole than I do. Right?
Yeah.
Because the homer in me is like, I don't give 2 craps about anybody else until they play Syracuse. And I hate to say it that way. Like, do I look at their schedule? Yeah. Do I look at Matt, we've talked about it, obviously.
Yep.
Like, I look at who their top guys are. I look at the series history.
Yep.
I don't watch enough lacrosse as much as both of you do. And I'll give you both your flowers in that sense. Like you guys, I don't know how you guys do it because it drives me nuts watching Maryland. Just as much as good as they are, that's just a great example. We hate Maryland.
Yep.
Or I hate Maryland.
Oh, I do.
But like, so
Very much.
I don't watch them because of that. And I think, in respect to me, and I'll own this, a lot of Syracuse fans need to get over that because there is a lot of good lacrosse being played across the country. Like,
and it's not even I appreciate you giving me credit, but it's not even that I watch a lot of lacrosse. It's that like my algorithm for Twitter is pretty much just lacrosse.
Right.
So like
that's where I'm at too. Like I'm only watching it, especially now, this time of year. Like my weekends go to lacrosse kind of thing.
Yeah.
Well, and this time of year, I'm always on Inside Lacrosse, looking at scores, looking at stats. Like I just love like anything to do with lacrosse. So it's like and like I used to coach at the D3 level too, so like
Right.
I'll check on the schools that I either coached at, or like one of my good buddies is a coach at the D3. Actually, a couple of my buddies are coaches at the D3 level, so I'll check on how they're doing. So like I'm always like kind of seeing like stats are, and I'm for some reason I'm really good with names and numbers and stuff too. So like that stuff just naturally clicks in my head. So and it just always has. So that like that's why that stuff just I don't necessarily sit down and watch a lot of games. I'll see highlights. I'll see what all the pundits, so to speak, are saying, so
I'm a little more on that train too. Like I would not call myself a college lacrosse expert by any stretch.
Well, I say that with air quotes because, like, realistically, right? Like, there aren't a lot of experts. Let's just be fair here. There are a lot of people who think they are experts. Matt, it's kind of like we did the joke about the sky falling. Like,
I am a Syracuse fan, and I will watch select other teams, usually like other ACC teams, and stay online. And that is the extent of my qualifications to talk about the wider college lacrosse world.
Yep.
Yeah, but I think that speaks to knowing more than some other people do. Like I said, I don't watch anything else. My algorithm isn't that way, and I'm speaking to my phone right now to get it to be that way, so it starts working out the way it does.
Lacrosse.
Right. Like it has football, it has every other sport. Unfortunately, it has Syracuse basketball slammed in my algorithm right now because nobody on my algorithm talks about lacrosse, which I'm working on getting rid of some of those people because I don't want to see the negativity and all that crap.
I feel like I'm less in the general overall Syracuse world and more in the general lacrosse world because I don't basketball or football or anything like that.
I would agree with that. I think for me, I follow more of the Syracuse people, so I get everything. I get the Syracuse.com people. I get the everything. Like and occasionally it works out. Like, I'm not even saying in the bad way. Occasionally it does work out where I get the national game where somebody like Brent Axe talks about a national game that happened.
Yeah, I get Axe on my feed.
Or Sam Croston, who we're working out to get on to talk about the women's side. But, like, that's a great example. Like, somebody like that who works in the Syracuse area but focuses on national.
Yeah.
And then posts about it. And I'm not, like, this isn't like a stand on my pedestal and preach to all these people to talk more about Syracuse. This is actually quite the opposite. I'd rather have Syracuse people talking about more of lacrosse as a whole.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's my rant. I'm done with my TED Talk for today about everything that can possibly happen. And, yeah, so we'll actually end it there. As long as you guys are good. You guys got anything else?
That's good with me.
I'm good.
Okay.
I believe in the talent. I don't know if I'll put it together, but I do believe in the talent on this roster.
I am circling that timestamp and deleting it from the episode, what you just said, just so everybody hears all the other stuff that you said. And I am sending that to Gary Gate as we speak.
Yeah. Negativity, pessimism.
And I will be sure to include your handle. I'll just say it that way too, just so we know.
Listen, I can go back to being the eternal optimist.
That's me. That's my role. Like I'm always like, yep, we can win every game by 20. Yep, good.
Yeah.
That's also my thing. Is I try to give people credit because I'm like, what these guys do is so difficult and so hard. And my lacrosse experience from like actually playing it is like a little bit of wall ball and like a couple times shooting on a goal, and that's it. Like I've never played an organized lacrosse game. I don't have the platform to be like, yeah, this guy sucks.
Not yet. We'll give it.
That's how I feel as a guy who attempts to go and play weekly with a bunch of old guys. Like the things these guys do, it's like, all right, none of us have any right to talk shit.
I feel like as someone who's never played, would get eaten alive in the Long Island men's league.
Probably.
I haven't really explored that very much.
I think if Matt's going to be fair, there are a lot of West Jenny people in the area that would probably eat other people alive if they showed up to a West Jenny box.
Yeah, right.
I think that's fair. Like, I think, but there's some honesty there, right? You have the eternal people who just, I'm not even saying it towards you guys, but like the eternal people who are like, I never played this, but this guy sucks.
Yeah.
Because of the shots that he takes.
I don't think you have to play to be able to have an informed opinion.
Certainly this timestamp as well, Cam.
Listen, this is my having. I was an analyst on Q's Countdown. It's a TV for 3 semesters.
Right.
But right, like, and I'm not the person who's like, oh yeah, I know exactly what the answer is.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you've studied the game enough to know.
Yeah, I think there's a good difference. Now you're going to make me launch into an hour-long thing. We won't make this go too long, I promise. But, like, there's a difference between being an analyst and you watching it every time and you kind of noticing some things versus, I'll just say, just for an example, my grandfather who never played and only watches Syracuse games and then goes, this guy sucks because of the behind-the-back shot, or this guy sucks because – Jimmy McCool can't get 50 saves a game or whatever. Like that's more what I'm talking about. Like the analysts are okay. Like it's just the people who don't know anything, or anything like that. And then we'll comment on it. Like Matt and I talked about the slides, like, and trying to explain that to somebody that the second slide is just as important as the first slide. It was like rocket science to people today. Because I was like, look, he's sliding. There goes his second. And then you just get scared.
I have a lot of junkies who have played the game who mentored me along as I got into lacrosse.
Yeah.
To help formulate those opinions for me.
But that's how it should be, though. Like,
yeah. And then I've been able to kind of over time figure things out on my own. Yeah. More so with offense. Like defense is not my area of specialty.
One of my favorite. Go ahead.
Sorry.
I was going to say one of my favorite things to do is go to a Syracuse game with someone who's never been to a lacrosse game before. Yeah. my mom's cousin, like my aunt and uncle, joined us today, and my mom's cousin, who they were in town visiting, he joined, and he had never been to a lacrosse game ever before. So like, explain to him what's happening, what all the rules are. Like, I just love that because like I love teaching people about the sport. So it's like, it's fun.
That's awesome.
I think you're molding him in your own way too. Yep. To be fair, it's just like we were talking about, like your sports cards, right? You give them out to people so that they get into the hobby. Yep. It's the same thing like taking somebody who's never been to a game or putting some SU student in an analyst booth, not mentioning anybody here, and then saying like, okay, watch this and then comment on it.
Yep.
There's a difference there. Like, and I'm not even saying it bad because like,
you know what? I'm not here to besmirch the student-run ACC.
No, that's actually what I was going to say. That's why
they're a lot better than a lot of other services.
Oh yeah, the SU students who do the broadcast for the games, like any of the sports where they do it, they do a phenomenal job. Actually, yeah.
So on that note, as we always do, we rant. Matt's stuff didn't crash, so we have a little victory today. Like Matt's sound didn't crash, Matt didn't freeze. Of course, I say that Cam's audio is gonna go.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, oh no.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Well, that's what Matt likes to do. So we'll end it there. Obviously, we'll end it there. Thank you both for coming on. Obviously, Matt, we'll do the Manhattan preview next week, I think.
Next Sunday. Yep.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
If Cam wants to, join us again, unless his schedule gets a little too rough and he can't.
I owe you guys more appearances over the course of this year. That's what.
Well, we're gonna do We'll have to figure out a time. We joked about it, obviously, but I want to figure out a time to do the history one, the deep dive on the history, because that's I've never seen a more passionate yes out of him right there. I just want to point that out. Like he's like, I'm ready. Let's go. Like,
hey, you mean I get to talk about this thing that I spent 2 years of my life doing?
Yeah,
it's fantastic. I know I've told you, Cam, but like. Anytime I talk to people about lacrosse, I'm like, you got to watch this. It's awesome. So you did a great job, Cam.
Means the world, man.
It's so cool.
You're an expert videographer. There, I said it. You're an expert. See, there.
You know what? That'll make my parents feel better about how much money they put into my education.
You learned that. That's what you learned. Like you can.
Yep.
Yeah, but we'll end it there.
No, like that piece changed my life in multiple ways, and I am forever grateful to it, especially for how it has been able to like get me into this Syracuse community, like Syracuse cross community, and like a greater cross community by that.
So I mean,
and I'll end it with the flowers again. I hate doing this so much to you, Cam, but you are somebody like Matt said who I don't know. I don't want to say embrace, but like expose a lot of Syracuse fans to lacrosse. Like. There are a lot of Syracuse fans who watch that.
The most surreal moment of that was when they switched SIDs because Tyler Katie went to the big leagues. And I messaged with John Stark, and he was like, I used your series as a kind of history like primer for the history
That's
of the
awesome.
program.
That's
Getting into it.
awesome.
That's
So
cool.
that was like, wow, I'm educating SU athletics on their own program. That was
Right.
Hell yeah.
That's good though. Like, there you go. I got your new career. Tell your parents I'm moving back to Syracuse. I'm becoming the SSID. You know, I'm gonna go to everything. I'm just a historian. You could be a film study guy. I got it all set up for you. Matt knows that people.
I wish I had time to be a film study guy, man. I'd be able to do so much more.
Yeah.
I'm still even just trying to find the time to write consistently.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, we're gonna get you back on to do the history.
I owe you guys more appearances.
You don't know.
Heck yeah, man.
I don't know how many Brian's been on, but I will do my best to be on.
I'll
He's
just
only had
say
one.
I was just saying,
Okay,
Brian.
I'm ahead. That I'll take.
Well, they're live right now too, so
yeah.
Exactly.
Brian at least has a podcast. Like, let's be fair to Brian here. He at least has a podcast, and obviously I will tell people this. Like, go watch that after. Like, if anybody's watching this,
I'm literally gonna tune into that as soon. I literally have YouTube up on my computer. I'm gonna turn it on after.
Because if you want to talk about guys,
once I get done with my morning meetings tomorrow, I'll throw it on while I work. That's usually how it goes with those episodes.
I'll end it this way. If you want to hear people hate on Syracuse, go to that podcast right now and go listen to every single one.
I don't know.
Diggs isn't on it today, so
okay. Naturally, the one person who should be on
this week would
today. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, we'll be reaching out to Diggs to do the helmet thing because I actually genuinely want to do that.
that'd be cool.
I will. Matt's
I love that.
Yeah. Cam can learn about the bucket helmets. Cam can learn about really old school.
I can be because I love the design aspect of it, but I have zero knowledge on the actual terminology and functionality of helmets.
I'm gonna tell you a secret, Cam. I'm gonna tell you a secret. Neither Matt or I are pretty much in the same boat in that. I would say.
Maybe we need Brian on that one too.
yeah. Like I can tell you what it looks like. I can tell you how it looks, but that's about as far as I go. I don't remember half the stuff they used to call it. So yeah, we'll end it on that though. As always, go orange. So
go orange.
Go orange.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on. Yeah. Thank you, everybody. Oh.